Hello and welcome into another episode of Inside Zone. You can hear my next guest every morning on 104.5 The Zone, 6 to 10 a.m. on J-Mart and Ramon. And you probably watched him play in the last 5 years of the Fulmer era at Tennessee or in his decade-plus career along the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. But we start, Ramon Foster, with what I imagine is your proudest accomplishment. That is being named class president, of course, of Ripley High School in the class of 2004. What's up, man?
What's going on, man? Yes, I'll be honest with you. Love getting the scholarship from the University of Tennessee, but be the representation of your senior class, I took pride in that. I really did, Lucas. That was a cool moment. And I had to give a speech to the graduating class, and it was so good. I wish I still kept it, but I got like a standing O from the parents and administration and the students. It was really cool.
It's an impressive high school resume you got.
It's pretty cool.
I mean, started on both sides of the ball, handled place kicking and kickoff duties, Mr. Football in the state of Tennessee in 2003, and class president of your high school. What's your longest field goal you ever made in a game?
I think it was close to about like 39, 40 yards.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. But you know what was crazy about it? Our starting kicker punter, Blake McAdams was his name, actually ended up playing. He actually was the starting punter for Mississippi State. He had a hamstring problem because he was playing safety, too. He was a quarterback that played safety. Imagine that. He was super physical, and he punted, too. I actually didn't think he was going to go to college to be a kicker, but he had a hamstring issue, and they went to like the next coachable kid that had a big leg, and it was me. So it was funny. I had a flat toe shoe. So I don't want to make it seem like I was side kicking it with accuracy. No, I was straight on, okay? I was putting the ball on the tee, walking 3 steps back on field goals and 5 steps back on kickoffs.
You're a West Tennessee guy.
Yeah.
How much of your childhood is driven by the dream of being a professional athlete?
Being from West Tennessee, I'll be honest with you, it was more basketball growing up. I did say at an early age, nonchalantly, not really thinking about the dream like I want to play in the NFL. Not knowing. At the time, Tennessee didn't have an NFL team, and the Cowboys were a team that everybody watched. They were on TV the most. And I imagine wanting to do that. One of my craziest childhood stories, we do silly stuff, was I use a payphone and call the operator, and I tried to get Emmitt Smith's number. She gave me 555-2222. I guess she must have knew I was an idiot kid, man. But I'll be honest with you. That journey for me coming out of West Tennessee, I love West Tennessee. I love Tennessee. I love the area where I'm from, Henning, Tennessee. Ripley High School is where I went to school at. I was raised in Covington, Tennessee. At an early age, though, I knew I wanted more, though. I wanted to get out. And I don't know what out meant, but I'll say this. I understood my family didn't go on family vacations. I understood that summer break was going to grandmama's house or going to my granddad's house. And I guess you say the realization of it, maybe I was a little, mature beyond my years was. I was just like, I wonder what else is out there. I knew I wanted to, make money, be a millionaire. Everybody says that. Heck, at that time, I just wanted $100, but I knew I needed and wanted to see something different than where I was. And the older I got, people have those conversations. I was a Beta Club kid, so I was able to go see stuff. I actually came to Opry Mills for a Beta Club convention in middle school, and I was just like, God, this is really cool. I want to do something more. I knew I wanted to get out. But I love Tennessee, too. I'll never forget making the decision to either go to Tennessee. Michigan State was a team that really recruited me. Ole Miss, Arkansas, Louisville, Kentucky. I knew if I got that scholarship offer from UT to me and Memphis was on me really hard. But I was like, that's too close to home. I've always had that mindset. That's too close to home. I want to go and see more. And that actually started early in childhood, though. And I don't even know why. Maybe just the realization that there was more out there.
Taking that Louisville scholarship offer would have meant playing with your brother, Reynardo.
Yeah.
How much of a role model is he for you growing up and throughout your NFL career as well?
I actually had somebody today say something. It's my wedding anniversary today, and I was just like,
congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. 10 years in, okay, which is a rarity for young people, number one.
Yeah.
But just in general, the black just population, it really is. And now in society, it's very rare for people to stick together. But he was one of the first ones, younger of youth of our family, get married. And I had somebody earlier today, as we speak about Reynardo, say, he took a lot of bullets early on as far as what to do and how to do it. I knew when he went to college, I wanted to go to college. You know, you had that thought process of, man, it'd be cool if. When he actually did it, I was like, yeah, I can do this too. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So for him to have gone to Louisville, for me, I was probably more proud of it than he was, because it was somebody in our city, little small town of Ripley, Tennessee, Lauderdale County, that got out and got a full scholarship. It was believable at that point. And he did a lot of the firsts. And when he went to college, it was cool. I actually visited him a few times in high school, taking a Greyhound bus, just because I admire my big brother. I love my big brother. Whatever he did, I wanted to do it. He didn't play offensive line. I didn't want to play offensive line. I wanted to play tight end, D-end, just like him. He wore long socks, black gloves like Javon Curse. Guess who also wanted to do that? I wanted to do that. But if I'd have taken that trip to Louisville and gone there, I don't know what I've been. Because he was there and I looked up to him so much and still do. But I think we need that period of separation for both of us to grow. And as I did too, I'd have been just Lil Foster. I'd have been Renardo's brother. But had he asked me, hey, come to Louisville, because they had a really good recruiting class. They were on the verge of something good with Coach Petrino. It was Petrino and Patino. Petrino, yeah. Petrino was the football coach there, and they were starting to reel. I think they had just gone to the Big East or something like that too, and they had a real good team, and he played early, started early. They recruited me hard, all of those things, but he never once asked me to go to the University of Louisville with him. And you know what? I appreciate that more than anything. Yeah.
It's funny, our last guest was Kevin Dyson. He got to be on the same team in the NFL with his brother Andre. Didn't get to be on the field together because Dice is a wide receiver, Andre is a defensive back. Only duo of brothers to ever score a touchdown in the same NFL game are Kevin and Andre Dyson, which is really cool. But I say all that to ask you, did you and Renardo ever get to share a field together? Obviously, you both play O-line, but did you guys ever face each other?
We did. No, not face each other
in the NFL.
No, not in the NFL. In high school, we were bookend DNs. Yeah. He was on one side, I was on the other. I was a blocking tight end. He was a catching tight end. But never in college, never in the NFL either. The year that we were supposed to see each other, he ended up getting cut, and that was the end of his career too. But no, I really wished for that. But we were in the NFL at the same time, though, which was by far one of the coolest things ever, until you realize there's a lot of brother pairs in the NFL too, though. But it was very unique for our hometown, from where we were from. If I'm not mistaken, we're the only two NFL players from the city that we're from, and that's something to be proud of. I said one of my life goals was to get my name on the big water cooler in the city, or the water tower, but probably got to pay for that, though.
Yeah, that's probably something monetary. I don't know what more you could do there.
You know it.
When does recruiting kick up a notch for you?
Honestly, when he goes to college. I was a sophomore. He was a senior. So him going to college, and it was just me. And I was starting to feel myself, Lucas. Like, just the idea that this is my school now.
Yeah.
The biggest, baddest dude that I knew in this school is gone. But that's also the year that coaches at that time. You got to think this is 2003. This is, 2002 at this point in time, to where recruiting wasn't what it was. Rivals had their stuff going on.
Really early on in that online database era.
Man, but it wasn't this deep, to where now they're starting to find kids in like the 8th and 9th grade.
Yeah.
I started getting more letters at the end of like my freshman year. One of my first letters were actually from a basketball school. Well, it was for basketball, Binghamton in New York. I ended up getting a letter from them, and then the Louisville one started to come in, and Memphis, and just all the local regional schools, TSU, Austin P, MTSU, and Tennessee, and everything else. But it started to really take off my junior year, and I was like, oh, this is getting serious. But I will say this, I feel like my brother ended up opening up the floodgates for all of that because they see him, and it was like, oh, he got a little brother too.
So he kind of helped put you on the map a little bit.
He did. I'll admit that. And, of course, I had to do my thing. And I'll say this too, our head coach, Coach Johnny McAdams, he understood recruiting. He understood getting tapes out. He played at the University of Tennessee, too, so he knew coaches. He knew how it worked. And we would go to camps. He made sure that we did, like, weightlifting competitions. He made sure that the guys that were right took their ACT, that had an opportunity to go places, took their ACT. So whenever I got all of that out of the way, it started to really crank up, and started having coaches come into the high school junior year, and it really picked up. Going until my senior year that summer and everything, like, it was getting offers was a real thing.
So you have options. You can go, you talk about wanting to be away from home. You can go up to Michigan State. That's a long ways from home.
And wanted to.
Yeah. You can play with your brother at Louisville. You talked about Memphis being a little too close, and then Tennessee factors in. So why Tennessee? Why not Michigan State?
Tennessee is interesting. Also, Ole Miss was recruiting me very strong. And
Still pretty close to home.
Yeah, pretty close to home. And I just didn't want to go to Ole Miss. So I loved Cut.
Yeah.
He recruited me phenomenally, man. Coach Roper, all those guys were there. Arkansas was very strong too because they had the Andrews brothers. They were there. They were offensive line that they knew were about to go into the NFL. But why Tennessee? How Tennessee, I guess, is the question. So going into the year, you start setting up official visits and whatnot. And I'll never forget, Michigan State were one of the first ones to set up the official visit. What's crazy about this is during the season. I'm like, heck yes, first time about to fly on the plane.
Is this Mark
No,
D'Antonio?
this was John L. Smith.
John Smith, who also ended up coaching at Arkansas for a minute. Replaced Nick Saban. Did he replace Saban at Michigan State?
I forget how that actually transpired. Was that who it was? But he was recruiting me hard, and I'll say this too. He was also at Louisville before, so he knew me. But it was Michigan State. They recruited me hard to set up the visit and everything. And I get a call probably the weekend I'm supposed to go up there. I get a call from, I guess, their traveling department that was going to set up the logistics of us coming up. And it was like, hey, we have a pretty huge snowstorm coming in. We think we may end up having to redo your recruiting trip. We're doing this with other players. We got to revamp this because we don't want you to come up here and get stuck. Cool. All right, let's reset it up next week. It was so early in the week that Tennessee was like, hey, you want to come up this weekend? Like, I know you got that going on because they were always in communication. I didn't tell them I was about to take my recruiting visit. I actually ended up having the Michigan State Council before Tennessee knew I was going to. So I ended up taking my visit to UT. Man, let me tell you. I already liked it.
Who's your primary recruiter? Who you talking to most?
Pat Washington, Coach Washington. Okay. It's so good. He was, if you're going to recruit a kid, call Coach Washington, Coach Pat Washington, and talk to him on how to get kids and the parents and everybody else. But I set up my UT visit, and it was a big weekend for us, man. Brian Brom was there. No, Schaefer wasn't there. It was just a lot of guys that were there that ended up going to play big-time ball, which was a big-time weekend for them. I think the fall session had just ended at UT, and, man, they had an off-campus party at the Electric Ballroom. And I never forget, I'm so green. I just had my Letterman jacket on because I'm going on my official visit. They take me up to the door for us to go in. It was guys that I knew that were there already too. Antonio Gaines, who was from Covington, John Poe, who was from Covington, and then there was a few West Tennessee guys. Daniel Brooks, R.I.P. to him, he was there. And I remember just trying to get in, and they were talking to the bouncer at the door like, hey, let him in. He's with us, and we finally get in. I never forget watching, seeing Kevin Simon, Kevin Burnett, said Houston was in there, young Aaron Sears. It was a show. T.I., the rap artist, he was performing before he had actually taken off to the next level. And I'll never forget, it was a fight that broke out in there. I was just like, and afterwards, okay, nobody got in trouble. Jabari Davis, everybody was in there that night, okay? Nobody got in trouble, and afterwards, James Banks. I never forget, I'm riding with John Poe, and he had told my mom I'm going to take care of him because she knew him, knew his family and everything else, and we go to Rocky Top, the place on the Strip that basically it was like an after-hour gas station. That's where James Banks actually got in trouble at one time. And we went in there, ordered wings. They took me back to my hotel room probably at about 3:30 in the morning, and the next morning we have to get up to go talk to Coach Fulmer and everything.
Is that your first time meeting Coach Fulmer?
No, he actually came to my house. Okay. He came to my house, man, and you want to talk about bringing the city out. Like, he flew into a small regional airport. He came to the house. I'll never forget when he came in. My mom decorated the house very well, okay, but she had a candle lit by the door. You get the smell walking in, and Coach Fulmer walks in and somehow stumbles and knocked the candle over and everything. And I was just like, this is fitting. Okay, this is fitting. But I had teachers show up. My head coach showed up over to the house. It was just one of those, like, this is my moment type of feelings, especially at the time with Coach Fulmer. Still, to me, just a legendary person in a place like Tennessee that love Tennessee football, man, that was a very cool moment for me.
So you redshirt 2004, your first year at Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's a 10-win season, SEC championship game appearance. And then fast forwarding to your redshirt freshman year, 2005, when you actually get to play, Tennessee, of course, goes 5-6, Fulmer's first losing season as the head coach, and lose to Vanderbilt at home.
It's Cutler.
Were you confident going into that season? Because Tennessee's a preseason top 5 team into 2005. Are you confident? Is that locker room confident going into that year? Or are you looking around like, I know you're young, but maybe there's some cracks in the armor here?
What's crazy, I didn't know what I didn't know. That offseason, I actually had surgery on my toe because I had a calcium deposit. It had to have been an injury from high school. I didn't know what I didn't know. I was just a blank canvas, let's just do work. I actually won most improved that spring. So I knew I had the moxie to kind of get the job done. Like, I had a really good spring for a young guy. And as far as me playing and starting, I knew I had a few guys. Who was it? Rob. God, what was Rob's last name? It wasn't Lewis, but Cody Douglas played on the left side too. And they had established the tackles already. The center was already set with Jason Restberg. And we just had a very solid squad at the time. And with that being said, I figured I could be in a backup role, even young. You know, I still got to learn. My technique got to get refined. Lo and behold, Cody Douglas get hurt in camp. I think his ankle got rolled up. And I'm thrust into the starting lineup like right before the season's about to kick
which
over.
Spot?
At left guard. Mind you, I played tackle. And I'm thinking to myself, you chose me to play left guard? Like, I know I had a great spring, but I didn't know it was going to be this, you know? And Fulmer was hard on him. I got to give it to him. He was, and I think it's for a specific reason. One, coaches know who can take what. And he knew if he challenged me that I'd accept everything that was coming my way. But I went through a lot that year and in camp by just trying to get it going. It was for a particular reason, too. But I ended up starting the first game of the year against UAB because Cody Douglas was out of the starting lineup. And it was crazy. I was at left guard, which actually ended up turning into my professional position. But I didn't start much after that because Cody he stuck with it and everything. And I didn't expect all of that going into my red shirt freshman year. I knew I could play, but I didn't know exactly what I was really doing, if I can be honest with you.
Not a lot of, former offensive line coaches that are head coaches nowadays in college football. Sam Pittman comes to mind, Mario Cristobal, but Philip Fulmer was certainly that, an offensive lineman at Tennessee, offensive line coach for a lot of years before he was the OC for Johnny Majors. But what's it like as an offensive lineman playing for an offensive line-minded head coach like Philip Fulmer?
You get no days off.
Yeah.
He'll do the big meeting, go see rooms, but he came and sat in our room daily. If we were having a bad day, he was there to see it. And there's no pressure like your head coach watching your performance. You know what I'm saying? It was intimidating. It was also one of those, he really cared about the position type of, spots he put us in. But you knew he knew what he was talking about. But the pressure of actually performing, and I'm sure it was a little bit of a aggravation probably for the position coach too, because he getting there coach. Because he couldn't stay away from him. It's his position. He's supposed to speak on it. And most coaches at that point probably have more knowledge than their position coach when you specifically coaching something. It's like, Vrabel with the Titans. You see him working with who for the most part? Outside linebackers, so they can't get away from it. As a young guy, though, not knowing the business side of it, intimidating, but respected how he went about it, too.
9-4 in 06, much improved. You guys take a jump. And then here comes 2007. You win 10 games, another SEC championship game appearance. Did that team believe it was good enough to win a championship in 2007?
Man, I didn't play a whole lot in 6, too, which is crazy. I figured me starting that first game was going to steamroll, and I don't know what happened, how it happened, whatever case may have been. But there was a lot of things that really took over. My class started to play a whole lot in 07. Cutcliffe had everything in order as far as the way Coach Cutcliffe, David Cutcliffe, had everything in order and how he wanted the offense to move. He challenged everybody as far as weight, as far as speed, as far as technique, as far as the mental side of it. I think we knew what it was going to be. Arian was coming to his own. The line was coming together. The wide receivers were well enough. And honestly, just the offense in general had been in a spot it never had been before because Coach Cutcliffe, I see why the Mannings are attracted to him because he's precision, he's clockwork, he's consistency like no other person I've ever seen in my entire life. Well, there's other coaches too, but like at that point in time, never seen it operate like that. I knew we were going to be good, and I knew there was a chip on our shoulder too on how we, the year before and how everything transpired. Definitely our best season we've had in a long time. Ainge was on, and we did a whole lot of stuff off the field. Everybody was tight. Everything was not cliquey, but you knew the guys you were around were on the same goals and aspirations as yourself. I think the record still may hold. I have to look it up. I think we only gave up like 3 or 4 sacks on the season that year. That's how good we were humping, man. Like we were on in a way that we were just rolling. There was nothing that could really stop what was going on.
Yeah, so what do you remember about that SEC championship game? The LSU game, Ryan Perrilloux at quarterback. That team obviously goes on to win a national title, but it's a crazy season, right? That Kentucky game, that regular season finale,
overtimes?
One of the craziest games I've ever watched. I think a 52-50 final, blocked field goal. You tackle Andre Woodson at the 2-point conversion. So you clinch the East with that win.
Yeah.
And then the high of that leading you into the SEC championship where there's rumors around Les Miles about maybe going to Michigan. He's got to shoot him down. So what's the vibe in the locker room before taking on LSU for a chance at Tennessee's first SEC title since, at that time, in what had been about a decade? It would have been 98.
It was, man. It was just the confidence was high, but it was still young-ish of a team too. Veteran enough, but still youngish that we didn't understand what we didn't know. We knew we could get it done, and we did for the most part, man. That was a game. And I'll say this too. The fight to get out of Kentucky, I'll never forget that game as well. It was like, man, we about to lose. Like those thoughts come through and you find ways to win. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is this going to end? It's never ending. And it's Kentucky. We're supposed to beat them. Why are we doing this right now? But that next week, preparing for the SEC championship, man, their starting quarterback was out, I think. And we knew about Perrilloux because I feel like he was a high prospect. We heard about him, but we, as a team, I don't think felt like we weren't going to win. We knew Ainge was good, really good, and we knew we had a really good line, really good squad. I got to give it to LSU because their defensive line was solid. Tyson Jackson was good. Glenn Dorsey was really good. Just you start naming guys, you be like, yep. And they had a few receivers that didn't do a whole lot in NFL, but they were like really college good. But we felt like we were going to win. I think our biggest thing was we got to contain Perrilloux. We can't let him beat us and all those types of things. It really was a matter of like 1 or 2 mistakes in that game. The intensity of going to Atlanta and playing in that game, we were ready for. I just think them not having their main guy in the game was probably the glitch in the system that kind of threw us off a little bit. Not necessarily threw us off. You just don't know what kind of plays the backup is going to make at that point, other than what he did in high school and whatnot. And one thing that I got introduced to, and I'll never just forget just the play, but just Tyson Jackson jumping up and like slapping the ball, the Watt swat. And it was a few of those, and I got to a point where I was just trying to get his hands down, and he just capitalized on one at the perfect time. I feel like it was like a 3rd down or something that we had to get. And just that team just had, it's the Jimmy and Joe sometimes. Mm-hmm. Those guys that you recruit at a high prospect somehow find ways to make plays, and they had guys in our team that just did that. It wasn't a feeling of emptiness. All I remember was we weren't going to play in the national championship or anything like that. It was the opportunity for us when it was around, and everybody craved this at the time than when you were in college, a BCS Bowl.
Yep.
And we were slated to play in the Sugar Bowl had we won. And, man, you want to talk about the letdown, because all I could think about at the time was the bowl gifts that we were going to get. BCS Bowls gave out the best gifts because it was the big-time bowls that you would go to. And that was disheartening. We ended up playing in the Outback Bowl and whatnot, but everybody sacrificed a lot. I actually shattered my thumb that year at the Vanderbilt game, pregame. I actually shattered my thumb. It's just how wired we were in. I'm doing one-on-ones the way offensive line and defensive line do, and my hand go up in between 2 helmets. And literally I got a plate and 4 screws in my finger. I ended up having surgery before we went to the bowl game and everything. It was, but before that game, I ended up breaking it, casting it up, and did surgery like a few days later, or after the SEC championship.
2008, obviously a big transitional period for Tennessee football. At what point did you know that Dave Clawson was not a fit at offensive coordinator in that season?
He couldn't relate to the guys. Like, that was the one thing. And I've heard he's gotten a whole lot better at that. I had a whole lot of dislike for him. Not a hate, but just like, why are you bringing that here this year? We're not fit for that. I actually had a conversation with Coach Fulmer recently, and he was just like, Ramon, just let it ride. He's like, I know how you feel, and I feel you. He was like,
and you've talked about this on the show.
I have numerous times before, and I admire what he does. Everybody says he's a great guy, what he's done at Wake Forest and whatnot, but I knew we weren't fit for that. His ability to relate to us as much as we tried to, and you know me personally, like I like to have a good time and bring everybody together, and it just couldn't click. It was divisive that year. We had a bunch of young guys that were doing their own thing, young guys that had started probably before they should have played too, because they were high prospects and whatnot. And we as an offense were very predictable. We couldn't hit on all cylinders. The way we ran the offense was off. And just the loss of respect of what we were doing kind of hit high. And I'll say this is no indication to me on my side of Fulmer. It was just the indication of just as an OC, you got to cater to what you have. And I don't think we were in a position, even when we were running strong and quick, what's the name of the offense, we didn't have the personnel even for the quick at the time. We were built as a power run type of team. That's where we were, and somehow he convinced Coach to let him do it. And we installed that like later in the summer in camp. And we'd be out on the field, and teams were pointing out where we were running, and they were right. So it was disheartening on how we were operating, and honestly a huge letdown for my senior year. And that was my thing. That's probably what my hate or dislike for how my senior year and Coach Clawson and that offense went. Like, don't do this on my senior year.
Yeah.
You know we're not built for how you want to run offense. We had guys with draft grades mid-round or whatever that didn't get them because of the performance or because of the way we looked on film.
Do you feel like that season hurt your draft stock?
I think so. But I'll say this, too. I didn't have a great combine either. I will admit that. But just the idea – I know other guys that didn't have great combines. I just think my tape didn't justify what I was capable of in that offense we were running. That's like trying to put a drop-back quarterback in a wishbone offense. You know what I'm saying? It's just not going to work. You work with your personnel. I've thought that, but I worked out fine.
Yeah.
You know, so I just hold on to that one. Don't do this my senior year.
What a roller coaster, man.
It was.
Just your whole career. It goes the highs and the lows. I don't know that there's one since then. Obviously, Tennessee football has had its ups and downs since then, but when you talk about 10-win season and 5-6, and then 10-win season and 5-7, and then Philip Fulmer is fired in what's a seismic moment, or asked to resign, I guess, in a seismic moment for Tennessee football. How did you find out that your head coach would no longer be the head coach at Tennessee? After
the Wyoming loss, we were hearing stuff, and that was another thing we incorporated, which wasn't bad, but we were having like Sunday meetings to run, and that year, golly, you taking me down. That was just structurally bad, you know? And we ended up having to go in and run and flush out your system, which ain't bad. But we had a Sunday meeting, and he kind of like alluded to us that this was going to happen. And we were hearing stuff because why? Parents of kids on the team had message board, material that they were reading into. And when he announced it to us, man, I knew then, and maybe you can call me a former guy, but I knew then that Tennessee was probably going to struggle for a while, just simply because you have a figure like that leaves. And I thought the process in which they asked him to resign or he chose to resign, it just didn't sit right. So that was a little funny right there for me.
So he did get to tell you guys.
Yeah,
right?
He told us. Yeah, and I actually spoke at the press conference about it too, and I told him it wasn't right. And of course, it's what you're supposed to say, but I knew it wasn't at the time. I looked at the way Tennessee did that situation as if, Bobby Bowden got a chance to bow out. Paterno got a chance to bow out. All these legendary coaches, national champion coaches got an opportunity to kind of bow out on their own. But I'll say this too, the introduction of Les Miles, the introduction of Nick Saban, the introduction of Urban Meyer put pressure on a lot of coaches because they won early and they won often, and they changed the style of how college was kind of recruited and played out. So it was sucky, but it is what it is.
That photo of you carrying Fulmer on your shoulders after his final game coaching Tennessee, the win over Kentucky in 2008. Do you have that hanging anywhere? Is it propped up anywhere in the Ramon Foster household?
I got it. They used to put the big boards out in the hallway, and I ended up getting one of those boards as I was leaving out my senior year after everything was finalized and done. We were just like grabbing photos and pictures and stuff like that they post like the past week's games on. So yeah, it's in my house. And I had somebody tell me at the time while we were walking around, this is going to be a legendary picture. I was like, what are you talking about? I had no idea. But it was kind of cool that anytime they mention him, you search his name, you'll see me and Anthony Parker walking Coach Fulmer out.
It's the lasting image of Philip Fulmer as the head coach at Tennessee, and there you are right in the middle of it.
Who would have thought? Little old me, a 3-star here.
Did you expect to be drafted?
I did.
Like what were you looking at?
I knew I was between like 3rd, 5, maybe 6. I knew I'd fall somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That was just I was like, man, I played at Tennessee. I played well my junior year. I had an okay year this year. I was just like, yeah, I should be drafted.
Did you expect to play guard or tackle it in the NFL?
Tackle, because it's all I had played. Me playing guard wasn't on my radar. And that was the thing, too. I told you earlier, as far as the combine goes, I go to Cincinnati, train for that. I probably should have went to a warm state, but I loved the guy that was training me. And it was close to my agent, Tim McGee, VFL also. He was my agent, and he provided for me in Mason, Ohio, at this place called Ignition. We trained well, did everything good, got the combine invite, played in the East-West Shrine Bowl. So everything's stacking up to like, yeah, and not just stacking up, but I go to the East-West Shrine game, and I go sit down on the bench, like, all right, game's about to start, and the coach was like, Howard Mudd, Foster, get in there. What are you sitting on? You're starting. I had won the starting position, so I'm like, I started in an all-star game, got the combine invite, all of these things line up, and lo and behold, 7 rounds and nothing.
How deflating was that?
Super. Because that's your dream. That's all your hopes and dreams, everything you work for, because y'all know, you know how college goes. You don't plan for work because you don't have time to.
Yeah.
I had no work experience with anything. I had no job lined up. My goal was the NFL at that point. I didn't know what means that was going to get me there, but I just knew I wanted to do it, and I had no outside plan. So to have you go 7 rounds, 256, if that's the case, picks, and not be one of them when you know you were capable of being one, was crushing. And you got to mind this, too. At the time, my girlfriend, now my wife, and I just had a kid, RJ. So I had that weight on me as far as being a provider, and I'm sitting there watching the draft with him, and I'm like, okay, first round, all right, I get it, whatever, Second and third, all right, cool. Woo, it'd be awesome if I could do this. I'll tell you about that in a second. 4th, 5th, and 6th, all right, here we go. We'll get somewhere. And I'm watching guys go by, guys I've done the All-Star game with, guys I've seen at the Combine go, and I'm like, what the world is going on? 7th round come up. And I get some calls.
Mm-hmm.
But they're saying, we got this pick, we'll do this, if, and that. And then more calls come in. And then I'm starting to realize this probably ain't going to happen. Last pick, Mr. Irrelevant, Ryan Suckup.
Titans legend.
A Titans legend. I'll call him a Steeler legend because he kept us out of the playoffs one time from not kicking a field goal when I know he could have made it. But that's neither here nor there. But immediately after, I go from honestly lightly depressed and crushed and just over with to I'm getting like crazy calls from Jets, Steelers, Browns, Cincinnati, just a bunch of teams. I probably had like 13 offers and whatnot to come by, and I end up picking Pittsburgh of all places to go to. One of the best, most crucial decisions I had ever made, literally, because I really wanted at the time to go to Cleveland because their scout recruited me probably the hardest. He just was consistently talking to me about, this in Cleveland, this in, well, you got a spot here. I'm glad I didn't because y'all know, like I know, with coaching changes, and they've had a lot, usually it changed personnel too. And I was fortunate to go to Pittsburgh, man, and actually land at a spot that worked out for me.
your mother passes away, right? As you're getting ready to go to the NFL.
No,
At what point did she pass on?
She passed actually while I was in the NFL, man.
Early on in that tenure?
Yeah, it was 2014. Right before the season started, right before like a contract year for me too. And I distinctly remember because I was looking to buy her a house. And that date is actually not too far from here. It's July 22nd, man. My phone is on mute at night because I got to get up and go train the next day. My wife gets a call, and she shakes me to wake me up. And she's got this look on her face, ghostly. I'm like, what? Your mom? And I'm like, what? And she busts out crying. I get on the phone with my auntie. She's losing it and whatnot. A very unfortunate situation. I know there's players in the league that's dealt with blood clot situation. I take it serious when I hear it because that's what she ended up passing from. And that was a wild year for me for a lot of different reasons, man. My teammates surrounded me. My coaching staff did a really awesome job of catering to me, bringing me into the fold, and letting me take my time through it. And honestly, probably had one of my best years as a pro that year. And, of course, you say it's the spirit of it, but I was fighting a whole lot of stuff, man, just because 49 years old, nobody ever imagines that. You know what I'm saying? And death surrounds people and affects people certain different ways. But I'll say this, too. That situation of me losing my mom has helped me help a whole lot of people with dealing with this. I'm a person, I'm an optimist to the core. Like I'm empathetic to people, probably at fault for fault, and I'm very much just trying to make sure people are okay. And I've had teammates lose, close ones. I've had people I know from, back home lose close ones. I've had, coworkers, just all across the board. And I always try to find the silver lining in a lot of stuff. And I know, just because I've talked to those people, that situation has helped me help others. You can kind of crash out when that type of stuff happens.
Yeah.
But I found ways to kind of, spin it in a positive light. Even to this day, we had one of our coworkers, teammates here lose somebody close to him, and just kind of helping him through that. And I'm just like, that's just how it, you can sulk in it, but it's also, you never let somebody die 2 times.
Yeah.
And, you keep their remembrance alive, and that's one thing I do with her.
It takes me back to when you're choosing your future by going with the Steelers over the Browns and the Jets and all those teams you mentioned, and you're walking into as stable a situation as you possibly can. You obviously don't know that at the time, but in hindsight, when you look at that decision, how much, I don't want to say easier, but how much more manageable did it make that situation for you to be in and surrounded by the stability of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization in that critical moment in your life?
Man, it was huge because that's a family-oriented organization. It's also a coach or a team that's only had 3 coaches since the 70s. That doesn't happen, you know what I'm saying? So being able to be around a group of people, one that understood the family concept, but also had that level-headed management, had that, means of dealing their process out. I know a lot of people, when I started, at the show, gave me a lot of flack for her being a former Steeler covering the Titans. But if you understood that organization, you'd walk in those doors and you'd love it because you see the operation itself. You see how the coaches designate, how the ownership is there, but they're not forceful in their direction. Like players are players, coaches are coaches, and ownership is that. But when it comes down to the curation of just people, the players, they kind of, really navigate that in a really good way to where there's freedom, but it's also just like, hey, we have a means of operating. What's wild about that, I told you about the draft process. When I was the second, third round, I was thinking I wasn't going to be picked there. When I retired, they actually gave me my draft card of my scouting report. And on my scouting report read 3 to 5. What's wild about I was rated by them a 3rd to 5th rounder. What got me was, and I admit it, like I said, I talked about the Clausen thing in college. But the way drafts works, they have a pecking order. Who's supposed to be where? Bench this at this position, run this at that position, be this at that position. Well, I didn't meet 1 criteria on there, maybe 2. My bench only got 20 reps on that. My bench has never been great, but I've always been labeled as strong, a mauler. But my 40, and you asked me about me playing guard as a tackle, I didn't see myself as a guard in the league, but the numbers and where I tested, I ran like a 5.5 and a 5.6. Before I ran that 40, I caught a nosebleed beforehand. And I actually ran live on TV, and you can Google it. You see me when I finish running, throw my head back and sniff blood up. This is basically what I did. And when it got back to the pro day at UT, I caught the flu. I had like 102 fever, so I couldn't perform. I weighed in, which I was lighter, but I couldn't perform my position. So that didn't help me, but my 40 time is what got me for the most part. And they ended up drafting a guy from Wisconsin who had barely a better 40 than I did. But at the time, I think Joe Thomas had come out of there. Yeah. I think he played next to Joe, and they were known as O-line U for the most part. And his 40 time was just a little bit faster than mine.
I mean, when you're picked up, you're walking into the defending Super Bowl champs.
I had no idea.
What do you mean you had no idea?
I was so locked in on having a kid. My son RJ had open heart surgery while I was training for the combine right here in Vanderbilt. So I had that going on. I was trying to pay bills back home.
Sure.
I may have watched the Super Bowl but didn't pay attention to it. It didn't register me the James Harrison run.
When does that hit you then?
When I got there.
I played for the Super Bowl champions.
When we were making a decision, I started looking them up, and it was like, they just won the Super Bowl. Like, that hit me then. Like, they just won the Super Bowl. And when I ended up getting there and seeing how they were operating, like, they were super loose and just champs of the world type of mantra that they had. And I'll never forget, we were rookies, and we had to stay back because we weren't part of the Super Bowl team. And they left during a workout and went to the White House and everything. So it really did not register to me that I was picking a team that had just won the Super Bowl. But the best advice my agent at the time, Tim McGee, gave me, said, Pittsburgh is a land of opportunity. If you ball, you'll take care of yourself. And what's crazy, when I got to Pittsburgh, I had scouts, I had a coach, I had a weight room coach tell me, we had a 3rd-round grade on you. I'm like, where were y'all at when I needed to be picked? I'm like, I got bills, man. 3rd-round draft pick at that time was getting like, I think the guy told me he got like $776,000. You know how much I got?
How much?
$8,000.
Wow.
$8,000. After taxes, it was like $5,600.
Wow.
So I had to make that stretch throughout the entire summer while trying to live and also pay rent and daycare.
Wow.
It was, even as a 7th-rounder, I would have enjoyed it better.
Well, your rookie year is year 3 of the Mike Tomlin era, and he's now the 2nd longest tenured coach in the NFL. So was the standard that you walked into as a rookie the same standard that you left when you retired?
Nothing has changed. His mantra is next man up always. The standard is a standard. It's something you hear him say all the time, and we're going to play a style of ball. Like, that was the one thing that I recognized early, and it was fitting for me to go there for that because if you, as they say, whip somebody's ass, then you got a shot there. They'll refine everything else. And I heard him say this recently on somebody's podcast. It's like, when we're talking about, coaching, like, that's what we paid to do. If you do what I asked you to do everywhere else, this will take care of itself. And I knew that early on because probably, honestly, the seasons we had at Tennessee, up, down, up, then down, like, if you do what you're supposed to do, that was one of the things that I felt my senior year at Tennessee. It's like, do what you're supposed to, we're going to be fine. And I knew as a pro then, I was the university of me. I was Ramon Foster, LLC, and I needed to make sure I took care of myself. So when it came time to perform, if I had to dog somebody out, I would. Those are the things that they lived and died by, and toughness, finishing, and just when you walk in the stadium, you walk high because this is how we operate as a team. And know what the heck you got going on.
What's Mike Tomlin's best quality as a head coach?
Consistency.
Like what you're just talking about.
Consistency and transparency. It doesn't happen often in the NFL. Guys wonder what their position is on the team. Like, it's been guys that come to Pittsburgh, it's like, man, he tell y'all everything. And, like, as a pro, you appreciate that, though, simply because – your job is dependent on so many things. How am I performing? Some guys don't know that until they get cut. Like, he will be literally in a meeting room in front of everybody and tell everybody what you're not doing and what the guy behind you can do. So you got 1, maybe 2 more weeks to prove that you need to do these things, or else I'm going to get him. And he was, special teams are breaking down. He tell guys, if we don't start getting this ball down within the 20, I'm going shopping. Like, he would say those things, and it's so blunt, but it's real because it's a business of performance. I need to know, like, we say we want to. Everybody want to know where they stand in their company, right? Like, that's where it is. And his transparency on letting you know that is something that I don't think a lot of coaches or teams do. And I've heard players say, like, they play mind games here. They'll tell you they love you, and then next thing you know, they'll cut you or they'll move you down the depth chart. Like, that ain't a good means of operating. That transparency and consistency of, just working hard, that's the one thing I respect about him.
Okay, so when does that transparent message come across that you're a guard in this league? You're going to play guard for the Pittsburgh Steelers, not the position you thought you were going to play.
In OTA, some, because they let me know if you're going to make this team and be good. I think they knew I was going to make the team. I really do think that because they started transitioning me to guard and tackle early. I went into guard early into OTAs, like in drill work. I'm like, I ain't ever played guard like this long. Like, why am I doing the entire practice this way?
Yeah.
But then I had older guys talking to me, and the assistant line coach was like, look, the more you can do. That was the motto. The more you can do, the longer you stay around, because if you can play guard and tackle. He was like, we only carry 7 on game day. We need 5 starters. We need a guard and tackle swing, and we need a center guard combo. Find yourself into being one of those was what I was told early on. And just the way I was treated in camp as an undrafted guy, specifically by Coach Tomlin, was something that, as I look back on now, I was just like, again, the transparency aspect of it. I was walking to snack one night after practice and meetings, and he walks out of the weight room because he can see everything on campus. And he was like, hey, big fella, Foster, come here. How you think you're doing? Man, Coach, I think I'm all right. I'm having a, okay. I'm being humble and don't know what really to say.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, you are. He's like, just keep doing that. We're going to be all right. And he just walked off. And I was just like, what the hell just happened here? So it happened early. And but before that, though, before he got to that point, first day I had in Pats, man, I got worked big time. And like I said, the way he treated me and was transparent with other players after me, too, and other players in camp, I got worked really bad by some world Super Bowl world champions and older veterans, that guys that have been in the league 6, 7, 8 years. And that day after practice, we go into the meeting room at campus, and he's going through his slides. And then my picture's up there. And he's got the red laser circling me. And above and below my name was "Don't Take It." And he showed clips of me just getting whipped and whipped and whipped. And I was just like, God, me? I'm undrafted. There's a guy over here. Get him. He was a drafted dude. But he challenged me early and often. And from that day on, every single day, Lucas, literally every day at practice, he'd walk up to me and say, don't take it. I'm not talking about like every Friday. Every day he said that to me. And I didn't think much of it, but it was one of those situations to where he knew he could do that to get the most out of me. And he knew I'd take it personal, too. And when that happened, I had a good day the next day. And like I said, we later had that conversation about, yeah, you doing okay. And then I proved it in the game. But that happened early for me. And I ended up starting 4 games my rookie year, too. So it's pretty cool how that journey of challenge kind of, paid off, actually.
So I know in this league, you prove yourself every season. Nothing's guaranteed. But at what point do you start to feel a sense of security that, I belong here. This is my spot?
Not even after I played in the Super Bowl. I didn't feel secure then. I think that next year they ended up drafting David DeCastro in the first round.
And Super Bowl is your 3rd year in the league? Second year.
3rd year they drafted a first rounder that played right guard specifically out of Stanford. I'm like, well, I play right guard too. He ain't finna start playing left, and the guy that played left had just gotten paid. I didn't feel safe then. I actually still end up starting that next year, and I got tendered, and I didn't feel comfortable any of my years other than the years I got paid, because it's just how I was wired too as an undrafted guy.
Yeah.
Trying to survive. I never rested. Like, that was one thing I said that happened when I retired. The sense of, like, calm over me, like, I felt like it was lifted off because I was I gotta go. I never felt comfortable unless I was getting paid that year because I knew I had to make the team that year, you know?
What do you remember about that Super Bowl 45 loss to the Packers? Just when you think about that game day, what's like the first memory that comes to mind?
How close we were to actually winning and just how good Aaron Rodgers was. Those are just the only two things. Like the passes he was making over all pro guys like Troy Polamalu. It's like you don't make those. Him and Jordy Nelson just had a day. Like I was sitting on the bench watching him throw over them to Jordy Nelson just like, let's go score. But even through all of that, I was just like, we can go win. And we were that close. And walking off the field with the confetti falling was terrible. But I'll say this, that experience, I see why guys stick around. I see why dudes chase the ring. I see why dudes have a hard time leaving the game because that opportunity to play in it is like none other. Listen, if Nashville builds that stadium and get an opportunity to host a Super Bowl, oh my goodness. You'll see it for yourself just how guys that played light up by being there.
Yeah.
So imagine playing in it, you know? Like it was a whirlwind. And I thought that year we'll get back and never did. We never got back.
How would you describe your relationship with Ben Roethlisberger?
A friend. A lot of growth together with both of us. I remember watching him coming in as a young dude. Well, I remember me coming as a young dude watching him and just looking at how he operated, just how things came to him. But he was just a dude and how he grew into a husband, dad, you know, just a great person that you wanted to be around. That was one of the coolest things I saw, you know, from a guy transitioning to maturity because a lot of people give Ben flack, but you got to think to yourself, he came in as a young 22-year-old, 22, 23-year-old, and won 2 Super Bowls before you could even blink. You know what I'm saying? And a lot comes with that, man. And for the stuff that he got pushed back his way as far as the way people had judged him was just like, what would you do? $100 million in 2 Super Bowls? That's a lot to ask of a guy. But as a person, as a friend, that's how I look at him. He's just a guy. 7.
Yeah.
It's just him.
You guys,
one of the best to ever do it.
You guys keep in communication?
Yeah, we do. The level of confidence of walking in stadiums with him, Lucas. When we didn't have him, we felt it. But when he was there, you just walk in like, yeah, we about to win. Or we got a real strong chance of winning. Like, that's what it was like with him. Like, all right, let's go win this and go home. Every single weekend.
How hard is it when you're enjoying success, your first few years in the league, you're starting, you've played in a Super Bowl, you're making money, and then you look down at your old stomping grounds in Knoxville and seeing what's going on. Kiffin comes and goes, the Dual years, the Butch years. How tough was it to go from a Tennessee player to going back to being a fan? Yeah, I guess being a fan for the first time and an alum and watching the toughest period of UT football history just unfold.
It sucked. It just did. One, because I play with a lot of SEC guys. One of my best friends in this world, brother, Marquise Pouncey, having to lose to him every single year. Not just that, we go draft another guy, Marcus Gilbert and Chris Rainey and Max Starks was an older guy, was the Florida guys. I'm like, golly. It sucked, though. I was just like, okay, we're going to be back. We're going to be back. And we hadn't got to that point of dominance that I wanted, and it was just like, all right, I actually got to a point where I wasn't tuning them out, but I just hated the type of ways they were losing, especially against SEC opponents. You don't want to see that. At least be competitive, and that's what I'm hoping they get back to now. You know, but as a pro watching it, you're like, man. But what's crazy, you still push athletes out that make it on the NFL rosters in first rounds and stuff like that. So it was just like, well, which one is it, you know?
You had a handful of VFLs come up and play for the Steelers while you're there. Big Dan McCullers ends up there. Most recently, Joshua Dobbs, that's right, Justin Hunter. Cam Sutton is drafted in the same round as Josh Dobbs. So did you feel a sort of responsibility when those guys joined you up there?
Definitely had an allegiance to it. Chris Scott was a guy that I actually vouched for. Mind you, too, they were drafting him to compete with me as a position, too. So he was a guy that I made sure I took care of and still kept in touch with after he had got released. Cam Sutton loved that guy to death. Josh Dobbs loved that guy to death. And Big Dan McCullers was so crazy as Tennessee fans. Everybody was like, Big Dan's big. And honestly, I was looking for a guy that's like 6'10", 380 pounds. I'm like, dude, you just as big as like everybody else in the league is. They created Big Dan McCullers like a mythical figure, man. But I did look out for those guys. Hey, any chance we get, go Vols. You know, when we beat Florida and everything like that, like we had a pep rally, you know? So, I took special care of those dudes.
You were always really engaging with media as a player.
Yeah.
And I don't want to speak for you, but we've talked about this. You've talked to me about the mentality of wanting to control your own narrative, right? Can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, because football players in general don't get an opportunity to show yourself, speak, be in front of the camera because you got a helmet on. Basketball players, you see their face. Soccer, see their face. Even hockey, see their face. Baseball, see their face. Football players, you don't get that. And football also gets the stereotype of being meatheads, the mantra. And I was just like, okay, I know I can speak. I speak well. I talk well. I can hold a conversation. And once I learned how the media worked, meaning they couldn't report anything until I told them. You know, You asked me a question, well, how was practice? It was good. I can't give them answer. Well, they can't report on a player being hurt of me not practicing unless I give them the answers. So I was like, oh, y'all really work for me. Okay. So, but I knew that I was going to be in a position to talk because I took pride in that. I like to write and everything too. And I just really took it upon myself to honestly kind of befriend a few of those people, stay media friendly. If there was something that needed to be said about what I had done, then I wanted to speak up for that too. And I think a lot of players, specifically football players, should do that because there's so many people that's writing about you, or there's so many players that, look, when you get that opportunity, you ask the question, take advantage of it.
And athletes, don't owe media reporters anything.
Right.
But when you see guys that just don't want to deal with it or brush it off or see it as sort of a burden, do you feel like maybe there's a missed opportunity there?
It is. And some guys just don't want to deal with it too. That's the other side of it. So like some just don't, I'm good. I'd rather not. And that's okay too. But if you can use the media to your advantage to where you can get a platform yourself, then you should, because those same people, like there's been so many people that have interviewed me that I've asked to come on my show here in Nashville simply because I created that relationship for you, a relationship with them. I see nothing wrong with that. And a lot of the times our information, our data bank of how we operate as players is very valuable in the sports media world. And guys should take advantage of that. If given that opportunity and like most of us, you will have to get a second career. Like you can be the owner of a company and designate people. There's only a few guys that get that opportunity. But most of us have to find a second career either because you don't want to be bored or simply because, you know what, I'll take some extra cash too. That's a part of it. I've seen so many guys really take advantage of it. So when did that hit you that was going to be your second career? After I was voted, I was very media friendly. They'd always come to me. And I probably wasn't saying much, but they'd always come to me. And then I was told, man, you need to go to the NFL Broadcasting Journalism Boot Camp. I was like, okay, cool. And I did it, and I enjoyed it. It was good for me. It was so good they actually started using my template that I wrote out as an example for classes after me. So I was just like, okay, I actually got a good job. And the counselors and teachers that were at that event were actually still reaching out to me, asking me how I was doing, and hey, do you want to do this? And hey, if there's something that comes up, I'm going to point it in your direction. And I actually ended up, just shadowing station here in Nashville a couple of times. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And next thing you know, they offered me my own radio show in Pittsburgh. I did a player show. It was like an hour a week. And then I had to do call-ins also. And you still do work in the Pittsburgh market? Still do. I had a guy present me an opportunity. He was like, dude, you got a lot of opportunity here. You need to take advantage of it. He was like, you're already in the media. You should do this. And it's actually been working out really well for me. How cool is it to have sort of one foot with the relationship that you have with Steeler fans and then the other foot with the relationship here in Tennessee that you have with Vols fans and the relationship you're developing now with Titans fans here on the Zone? It's pretty cool. But I'll say this. I knew I wanted to do this, though. I said, and it's probably somewhere on my Twitter account if I didn't erase it or something like that, like, I want to get established in Nashville. And I said that from a media standpoint. That was one goal of mine that I had. And I knew that I was going to live here when I retired, and I knew that I wanted to not just be here and not actually I don't care about the fame of it or the notoriety of it. I just want to be an impact here. whether it was something good I said on the radio or something I could lend to either the Titans fan base, Vol fan base, or just sports fans fan base. And I always kind of had that thought. And it's crazy that it actually happened as soon as I retired.
You played over a decade in this league. You didn't have a single losing season, and you got to end your career on your terms.
Oh.
That's crazy. What does that mean to you?
It doesn't happen. And I took it for granted and kind of still do. Like, I have some real close friends of mine, the players on other teams that I didn't realize were watching me. I had a friend of mine that was in Vegas recently, and he was with Kalichi Osemele, an offensive lineman, was with Baltimore. He was with the Kansas City, and he was like, he made him call me to tell me how he had respected me and how my journey was, and being with one team is something that he said. And I was just like, I didn't think that was a thing. Well, when you look at it, the idea that so many guys switch teams with free agency and don't have the ability to build a legacy, but the other side of it is you don't get an opportunity to bow out when you want to. That was cool, the way we did that, and I knew I was done, like ready to be done. I could have squeezed out another year or two, but everybody I played with here or trained with here was done or cut or released, and the motivation to continue to run every day, recover, I was just like, yeah, I'm kind of over this part of, football. And when that starts to creep in, I was just like, yeah, I don't want to go out there and waste time, or I don't want to go out there and look less than. That was my thing.
Yeah.
If I go out there and look trash, then that's my reputation. And I do not want to be cut. Like mid-season cut or go to camp and you're a veteran release? No, I didn't want that.
How hard is the adjustment to start doing morning radio? You've been waking up early your whole life for workouts, for training camp.
Yeah.
But what's different about waking up for morning radio?
You got to be locked in mentally. You're on we're on 4 hours.
Yeah.
But throughout the day, you got to be on news cycle, social media. And when I took this job, that was the one thing I did commit to, though. I was like, look, if I'm gonna do this, I always have the consciousness of just, if I don't want to be a former pro that's doing it because I'm a former pro. I want to be a pro at this. And I've taken it upon myself. That first 2 weeks was probably the toughest, because I was like, I'll be good. But then you realize you get on air and you really got to exalt yourself to the people, because if I come in like this and we're talking like that in the morning, then the crowd is going to hate me for that. So I get up for this. I enjoy putting on, hitting the button to turn the mic on and we're go and people listen and tune in and they interact. I take pride in that, man. And I also take the challenge of me being a non-Titan guy. I'm a Vol for life, but this fan base here is Titans take it serious. And I am in a position to analyze their team, report on their team, and give them some insight into what I went through as a player, but also to hold those conversations with people that weren't fans of my team, and they told me they weren't. But now, like, I've created so many friendships behind it, man, that I've enjoyed it. The transition was good. The first 2 weeks were probably just like, all right, I got to get adjusted. But because it's more mental than the actual physical, like I can go be numbskull in a meeting because I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I got A gap, I got B gap. But like to really lock in and be engaged in conversation was the challenge of like, okay, I got to take a mental break here too.
Well, and I want to get you out of here because you got to be up at like 4 a.m. tomorrow, and it's about 5 o'clock right now. So I really appreciate this.
No problem.
3 quick hit. This is just for me, for my curiosity. Toughest guy you ever had to block at the college level, whether in practice or in a game?
Robert Ayers.
In practice?
In practice. He was my biggest challenge. I got most improved 2 times solely probably because I was going against him. We were so hard on each other in practice, and that's like one of my best. There's a few people I talk to every single day. He's one of them to this day. It got to the point that he was beating up offensive linemen, and I was beating up defensive linemen like bad. Like I was dogging him, and he was doing the same thing. The only challenge in practice was him. I mean, so we went at it to where it was like stalemates. Yeah. Like when we went, Fulmer was like, all right, y'all can't go against each other no more. So Rob was probably one of my toughest opponents in college.
And
Wesley Woodyard.
Wesley Woodyard. Oh, at Kentucky.
In college, in Kentucky. Wesley Woodyard, and by the way, 2 of my really good friends. Those 2. And I think we became friends because of that respect, though.
And in the NFL?
Haloti Ngata, and Malik Jackson and Calais Campbell.
Malik Jackson.
I can't not name those others, you know? Those and Geno Atkins until I figured him out a little bit. Early on, Geno, his leverage, and he's not super tall, was just like something to deal with. Like, God, how do you push me? Like, I'm a big dude.
You and Malik didn't overlap at Tennessee, right?
No, we didn't. But one of my, I guess, now I can say it, weaknesses was tall guys as tall as I was that had long arms as long as mine.
Yeah.
He could get me before I could get him sometimes, and he'd just get off real quick because it's separation. And Nada was just a load. It's just hold on for the ride, baby. That was it with him. But yeah, and Calais is another 6'8", long arm, shifty guy before he's older Calais now. He spot picks. And Chris Jones. I can't forget Chris Jones with Kansas City.
Lastly, Titans are playing Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
On the West Coast, whoever they're playing, game's over at, 11. You got to be up whenever you got to be up to be on air at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Get as much as I can that night. If the game's settled by the end of the third, I'm out. I catch the ending of it late. And then I get up early enough, as you said, to where I can catch the highlights and read the box scores and see what's next. That's a tip for you youngins that want to get into the game is – be detailed to a point, know what you're going into, and then get up the next morning and restudy. That's the balance of creating a career in this business. Like the specific plays, I can always go back and find them because I got the All-22. If there's something somebody's asking me, I have the All-22 subscription, and I can detail it out for them if somebody's ever asked me a question about what I saw late in the game if I miss a game. Box score, getting up early enough to actually rehash your game plan is a huge pro tip.
I can't believe you let me keep you this long on your anniversary.
My wife's at batting practice with my boy, so she's not even home right now. We're a sports family that stress grades, man, so yeah.
I love it, man. Well, go celebrate it. I hope you guys are able to tonight or sometime this weekend. Congrats on that, 10 years. That's incredible. And thanks so much for doing this, Mo. Appreciate it, man.
Anytime. I told you that. Anytime you need me, I'm there.
You can hear them 6 to 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone each and every weekday. And you can hear us on the next edition of Inside Zone. I'm Lucas Panzica, and we'll catch you next time.